My grandparents were missionaries in India back in the 1930s and 40s, and this skirt was made from what's called a Naga blanket. It's got hand weaving and embroidery, and we've used it as like tablecloths, but really it just sits in the trunk or in the drawer, and nobody ever sees it. Since Fringe is in this year, I thought this was a perfect time to take this and make it something that I would actually use. My mom was born and spent many of her growing up years in India, and she had a lot of interesting textiles, and I have inherited these. So these are vintage linens that are ethnic, that are from India. And so this one is this long. The edges are green striped on both sides, but then the other edges have fringe and some weaving in them, like some embroidery in purple and greens on this side. And then on the other side, it's pinks and greens. It does have a seam right down the middle of these, like it was two narrower pieces that were put together. Probably used as a tablecloth, I'm guessing. And I am going to turn it into a skirt. Fringe is really one of the trends this season, so I thought I would use this as the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half, and then I'm going to figure out how long that I'm going to want my skirt to be, with the fringe being my hem at the bottom. And I'll cut that off, and I will sew a casing and put elastic around it, and sew the side seams. And then it's going to be a super simple, easy skirt that's going to have fringe on the bottom. But I can't do it today because I'm out of elastic. When I tried it on, it was 9 inches folded over, so I've switched it to 8 inches so that I will have enough room for a casing. And so now, this is probably not the fancy way to do this. I'm going to cut right here where it's folded. I'm a little nervous about cutting, this vintage fabric from India that has been in my family longer than I've been alive. But we're doing it. It's better to have something and use it than to have it stored and never use it. At least that's my story. What's the point of having it if it's stored away in a box and never seen? Okay, so this should be my extra fabric. I don't know, I can make some hand towels out of it. And then this is going to be my skirt fabric. So now I need to sew up my side seams and then put in my casing and put in an elastic. So now I'm going to put my right sides together, and I'm going to put these right next to each other. Since this is a selvaged edge here, I don't even have to worry about making, folding over. It's not going to fray or anything. So I'm going to stick this here in my sewing machine. I'm going to start at the bottom where the fringe is to make sure that that side is even. And I'm going to start sewing. So I'm going to backstitch to lock those into place. And then sew these two pieces together. Okay, so I've sewn down the sides, and I decided to leave the last couple of inches not sewn right here to give it just a little slit. And then I went and I ironed down a 1/4 inch. I had to cut it all straight. So I ironed down a 1/4 inch, and then I folded that and ironed it down another inch. And I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew all the way around except leaving just a little hole so I can fit my elastic in it. Here's my edge, and you can see how clean finished it is on the inside because I folded it down and ironed it at a 1/4 inch and then at a 1 inch, and so now it's nice and clear. So So now I'm gonna take my elastic, and this is the only piece of elastic I had, and it fits me like just barely, so we're gonna hope that maybe I lose a little weight, but we're gonna use this elastic. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take a trusty little safety pin and we're gonna stick it through the elastic. And now I'm going to find the opening that I left, and I'm going to start pushing this elastic through this waistband, through this casing, using my safety pin as my little holder to get my elastic all the way through. So you push your pin, you kind of scrunch it up on the safety pin, hold on to the safety pin, pull the fabric. You might want to safety pin the other end of the elastic just to make sure you don't accidentally pull it all the way through. Just dawned on me that I made a skirt without pockets, and I hate skirts without pockets, so I'm going to add in a pocket or two with the scraps that I have left. So I made my pocket pattern a while back, and all I did is I kind of stuck my hand down, traced around my hand, made sure that it was large enough for my phone to fit inside. And then I made this pattern out of some cardstock so that I could use it over and over again. Putting in pockets in clothing that's pre-made, that doesn't have pockets, or like we're doing right now in one that I'm making. So I'm going to cut around this about 1/4 inch larger, just so that my fabric scissors are not cutting this cardstock, and to give me a little extra seam allowance. I'm gonna have to seam rip now on the sides. So I'm gonna start right below my elastic and seam rip until that fits. Now that I have my two pieces, I'm gonna sew them together in an X pattern. Not the prettiest X, but it'll do. Now I'm going to kind of try to even this out so we have about the same amount of gathers all around the skirt. This side over here doesn't seem to have as many. Just squishing, scrunching, just a little bit more even. And then the place where I had the hole, I'm going to sew that up. I'm going to have to kind of pull my elastic and make sure that I don't sew on my elastic while I do this. Always snip your ends very, very short. Nobody wants threads hanging off. And my skirt is done. It's reversible. Sort of. This side has pink. And the pockets still work. Or this side has purple. So I'm going to take my